not even Norlin era Gibson could screw this thing up. The ES-335. Hey everybody, welcome back to Cream City Music for another episode of On the Bench. I'm Jacob, and this is perhaps Gibson's greatest achievement, the ES-335 and its siblings, the ES-345 and ES-355. This guitar would have came out in 1958 as the world's first thin-line, semi-hollow archtop guitar. In 1958, you had two options: big ol' hollow jazz boxes or Gibson Les Paul. If you wanted to be able to get that bigger, warmer, hollow body tone, but without all the crazy feedback, this is what you went for. This was Gibson's solution to a number of people saying that they wanted to find a way to fight the feedback at louder volumes. 1958, Gibson debuts this, and really, this guitar has stayed relatively the same. It's still gonna have the center block, it's still gonna have the hollow wings, it's gonna say Gibson on the headstock, it's gonna be a double humbucker. There's not a ton of crazy changes on this model since it came out in 1958, but there are some transitional changes and transitional periods that do go on throughout its lifespan. And this particular one is very interesting. This is a 1969 ES-335 made at Kalamazoo, like all Gibsons were at the time. But this is the beginning, the very beginning of what ends up becoming known as the Norlin era. And the Norlin era, as I'm sure many people know, is not exactly the brightest spot in Gibson history. Now, one of the first things you're gonna notice is, one, this is a trapeze tailpiece guitar with the nylon saddles on the ABR1. That's pretty much standard across the board by this point in Gibson history. We've got block inlays. We do have the narrow 9/16 nut width. Now, the biggest and probably the coolest thing on this guitar is that the Norlin era volute is just starting to form, which gets bigger throughout the 1970s, but in 1969, they were just starting to form those. And you can see just a little bit of a ramp right here, right behind the nut on the back of the headstock. Now, why were they putting volutes on these guitars? Gibsons are jokingly famous for having broken headstocks. So to prevent headstock breakages, they not only reduced the angle of the headstock from 17 degrees to 14 degrees, but they also started putting volutes in the area that the headstock was supposed to break. The other thing that Norlin era Gibsons are famous for is having the Made in USA stamp on the back of the headstock. But this being a transitional year of 1969, it doesn't have the Made in USA stamp on the back of the headstock. Some 69s do, some don't. Some 69s have volutes, some of them don't. Another transitional feature of this guitar is that it still has patent number pickups, which at this point, the T-tops were starting to be introduced. What is a T-top? What is a patent number? And what is a PAF for that matter? A PAF is the Gibson humbuckers from the mid to late 50s and into the early 60s that have a sticker on the back of them that say PAF or patent applied for. The patent number pickup is the exact same pickup with a different sticker on the back of it. For whatever reason though, people insist that the patent number pickup sounds different than a PAF pickup because of a sticker that's on the back of the base plate. Production standards of the 50s and 60s are extremely loose by modern standards. Gibson late 50s was going from Alnico 2 to Alnico 3. By the early 60s, they're going to Alnico 5 magnets in some of these pickups. By the time you get to the end of the 60s into the 70s with the T-tops, they've changed the bobbin material from butyrite to actual plastic. Winding machines have gotten a bit more sophisticated. We can now monitor how many windings we've put onto a pickup. There's still gonna be a variance in output, but it's a lot tighter than what it was in the late 50s and early 60s. If one guitar sounds one way because of the set of pickups in it, and another guitar sounds another way because of the set of pickups in it, that's just the way that went. It's the way things worked at this point in history. And that's why these are all unique and they all have their own distinctive tone. They were never meant to be that much different from one another. So why is this model so significant? This guitar being a 1969 model, it was built at a very interesting time. The Norlin era for Gibson, which starts technically in 1969 and going on to 1986, is kind of the darkest period in Gibson's history.
Oh, that's not so much. thought so!
The one thing they couldn't screw up, no matter what they did, was the 300 series thin lines. This guitar is the longest running continuous production electric guitar in Gibson's catalog. Almost everyone and their mother has played a 335, a 345, or a 355. Freddie King to B.B. King, from George Harrison to Stevie Ray Vaughan, Johnny Marr to Noel Gallagher, Chuck Berry, Alvin Lee, Eric Clapton, everybody has touched one of these things at some point on a record or at a performance. That's it for this episode on The Bench, folks. If you want to check out this ES-335 and some other guitars like it, you can find it on our website at creamcitymusic.com. If you are interested in all playing, no talking gear demos, you can check out our series Tone Check right here on our YouTube channel. I've been Jacob. I'll continue to be Jacob, and thanks for tuning in.